Plenty of reasons to rise and shout. Let's get to what's trending.
I think that's the beauty of this conference is everyone can compete any given Saturday.
I believe we are once again the deepest conference in America.
Ooh, those are the words of the commish.
Near the echo of AT&T Stadium.
Brett Yormark, yes. He presented, and it was quite the presentation to all members of the media in Dallas on the Cowboy Star, essentially. And he feels like, in a way, the Big 12 is the star of Power 5 conferences in being the deepest top to bottom.
That's one angle for it, right? You don't have the best teams in the country, like the top end, but the depth, certainly good.
Perhaps the most competitive. And he's not the only one that is buying into that. Here's Gus Malzahn, UCF's head coach, on the Big 12 as a deep conference.
You know, there's no weeks off. Most schedules, matter of fact, most other Power 5 conferences, there's a couple weeks that you can kind of catch your breath. You can't. And it's real special. And I don't know about BYU, but we have 5 road games, the new kid on the block, conference games. That's no joke. And then we play Boise State on the road, too. That's no treat, as y'all know.
Yes.
So our schedule is like one of the toughest schedules probably in the country. And then you just said it. I mean, it's top to bottom. It's as good as it gets.
No chance to take a breath. We should remind you.
I like that he admitted that, by the way.
Yeah.
Like what coach says.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, when we play Vanderbilt, it's easy.
This loaded What's Trending conversation presented by Feastbox, donating 10% of every order to Full of Hope, a charitable organization that feeds hungry families. He brings up some interesting points for sure. And when we looked at BYU's schedule, we had the same thought. Okay, outside of 2 non-conference games, where's BYU's breath?
Where's the auto win? That's an automatic
There
win.
are none.
0.
There are
Kansas
no wins
used
like
to
that.
be that, but even 2 years ago, they won at Texas. And then last year, obviously, had the resurgence where they went to a bowl game for the first time in 500 years.
Yeah, West Virginia is, quote-unquote, picked to be the worst team in the conference. And Neil Brown, their head coach, was super fired up about them being overlooked. And then he presented, look, we got one of the better offensive lines in the country that comes back. We feel like we have a budding running back star. And I'm thinking, if West Virginia is the worst team, maybe there is something to this deepest Power 5 conference or most competitive. So, Jarom, straight up, are you buying into the idea that, as several coaches and the commissioner, Brett Yormark, have said, the Big 12 is the deepest Power 5 conference?
I think when you look at all 5 and you assess the bottom, because we're not looking at the top, we're looking at mainly hey, how's the bottom half?
Yes.
That's what we're looking at. How deep is this pool? Can I touch the bottom or not? Are my ears going to explode when I dive in head first here? The answer is yes, your ears will explode because, yes, I think top to bottom, there's not a team that's just a gimme, right? And Kansas, again, changed that. Like in the SEC, I mean, Vandy went from 2-10 to 5-7, just re-upped their coach this morning, by the way. You look at certain schools, like Stanford has struggled recently in the Pac-12, but even Washington State's interesting. Oregon State had this resurgence. SEC is tough, though. Like, SEC is pretty stinking good. I know Vandy is the butt of the jokes, but besides that, if you just say SEC, it's tough. So probably
is Missouri good in the SEC?
No, but I'm intimidated in the same way as you say at West Virginia, at Missouri.
The name quality.
Yeah, name brand. Those are SEC players. Come on now. So yeah, but when you look at sort of how bad are your bad teams? In the this is one metric. It's not everything, but it's something. SP plus post spring. Mm-hmm. The worst team was 61st, Kansas. BYU, by the way, at 60 was the second lowest rated. There's a lot of teams there that are interesting. The other Power 5 teams all had a team past that conferences. 79, Virginia, the ACC. 83, Northwestern, and those issues. 95, Stanford. 103, Colorado, even worse, right? Those are tough. I'd have to look at SEC. I can't remember where Vandy would be in that. But if you look at the bottom, it's pretty good. You're telling me all 14 are in the upper half in SP+?
That's college football.
That's tough. There's not a team in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, if it was an FM radio station. This is difficult. But my concern sort of with parity is, will the Big 12 have the Pac-12 problem, which is too much parity, and you never have a one-loss team that gets you into the playoff? Remember, a two-loss team has never made the 4-team playoff. when it's an extended playoff starting next season.
So does it
that's
matter?
Different. But looking at this year, it's been TCU's run. They had to go undefeated in the regular season to merit playoff despite loss to Kansas State.
Yeah, they were so good they got in with a loss in that
Yes,
championship game.
but if you have one loss, you're in the mix. Oklahoma in 15, 17, 18, 19. Like, Oklahoma's leaving. So the parity of the league is fun because every week it's interesting. But I think for the overall health of the league, you are mostly defined by how good the top-end team is or teams are.
Okay.
No one hands out a trophy for parity. No one's saying, oh, congratulations, Pac-12. You had 5 teams ranked in the top 25 in the final AP poll of the regular season last year. No one cares. But is it fun week to week knowing there's a big game? Sure,
100%.
but it also means your chance of actually being a team that gets to the title game like BYU is lessened because it's almost too good. You almost had, like, Utah has benefited a little bit from, one, being a great team, but two, they haven't always had to go through the big dogs in certain years to get to the Pac-12 title game. They've had to go through a couple, but they haven't had it, like, loaded with the top ends until you get to that Big 12 title
the Pac-12
game. The point is to get to that game.
With Utah in the mix, hasn't really sniffed the college football playoff.
They've not had a team that only had the one loss since Washington in 2016?
It's
Utah
been 7
had
years.
one loss going into the Big 12 title game in 2019 and lost that, then lost to Texas in the Alamo Bowl. That was their chance at that point. So depth is good, but I don't know that it's as valuable as we think. Like, so what?
I had a great conversation with our friend Brett McMurphy, who we finally had a chance to speak with in person. I mean, we've talked to him over the years, over the phone, over Zoom, and we've had lots of interactions with him. But it was just fun to sit down and talk to him for 10 minutes. And he said,
was the mustache as glorious as it looks like on TV?
It was fantastic.
Good.
It was true to an Oklahoma State alum.
That's what we expect.
It fit, yeah. Whiskey Pete, is that the name of their mascot?
I think so.
It fit that persona. Brett was awesome, very gracious with his time. And he said, well, do you think BYU can get to 6 wins? And we kind of went through the schedule, and he's like, I've got them in my bowl projections. I think that there are at least 6 wins on the schedule. But he's like, it's weird. This conference, about half of the conference could win 5 games or win 7 games. He's like, there's no other conference in America that I feel the same way about when it comes to teams that could swing from 5 to 7, at least the number of teams that could do that. And so I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, that makes it very compelling, especially late in the season when teams are trying to get bowl eligible.
A context we have not sort of had,
Right.
which is, what bowl game are we going to if we qualify?
Yeah, so there is context in that, which is fun. Being part
Yeah.
of the Big 12 Conference, every game, especially late in the season, matters if you're trying to get into a better bowl game. Like, hey, BYU wins again at Oklahoma State, the final game of the season. They're going to bump up a line in the bowl lineup and get $1 million more, or whatever. Like, those things are now
Divided by 14.
in play. And so that's, I mean, it's fun to look at it that way. And I agree with Brett. Like, there are at least seven teams that could swing from 5 to 7 wins this season and be bowl eligible. But to your point, it does not help in this year's college football playoff. The great news is it doesn't really matter after 1 year. Once the college football playoff expands to 12 teams, now you've got a shot for a conference that has a lot of parity to get a 2-loss team still into the playoff. That could happen in a 12-team playoff.
For
right?
sure. And
so it
maybe
just doesn't matter
a
after this
3-loss
year.
team, depending on how that
How
goes.
good you are, how tough your schedule is.
I would say SEC, Big Ten are more likely to get a couple in there. But, yeah, you want to be in a position. BYU needs to be in a position where it can at some point have a 2-loss year where it makes the extended playoff. That is the end game goal for BYU. The Big 12 title obviously gets you there. But to me, the biggest goal that BYU could have realistically is to get to the playoff.
Yeah.
Because now you're actually playing for a national championship. Before it was like, if we could somehow get to a New Year's Six, it's in the team room as one of the stated goals. To me, that was the top of the mountain. Like, a national title was not a realistic situation for BYU because it needed to be a 1-loss team. Now in the extended playoffs, starting next year, as you mentioned, if you are a 2-loss team, you are very likely to be in the playoff. I'd have to look to see how many 2-loss teams there are per year, but I feel confident that a 2-loss BYU probably gets in the playoff.
There are a bunch of 2-loss teams in the top 12.
Yes, that means you're probably 1 loss going into the Big 12 title game, because obviously if you win it, you're in. Or do you have 2 losses and somehow you got to the title game?
You win the game, that's another path to get in.
You can't be – I don't feel good about a 3-loss Big 12 team feeling confident that it's getting into the playoff.
That's going to be tough. Outside of the
We'll see how it
SEC,
shakes
outside
out.
of the SEC, really.
And Big Ten a little
Maybe
bit.
the Big
Because they
Ten.
love them some
Maybe the Big
Ohio
Ten.
State, Michigan,
Sure.
Penn State types.
Yeah. So outside of those two top-tier conferences, it's going to be tough. So I don't even know that a 3-loss team in the Big Ten is going to get in. So just how about lose 2 or fewer and then
when you
give
got
yourself
when
a
you got
shot?
that wide of Penn State, it sure looks nice. Like there's brand association. Also this, we've always valued Power 5 wins here. It's been a big deal as a Group of 5 team or an independent to get a Power 5 win. This will get not old, but we will become familiar with it and therefore not as sort of amazed, right? With Power 5 wins, every win BYU has in the Big 12 will be very valued and precious. The first couple of years we're going, oh my gosh, BYU won this conference game in the Big 12. Like, if BYU wins at Kansas, it's like, oh, that's a Power 5 conference win on the road.
Yes.
So every one of those will be gobbled up like the first food you consume on Fast Sunday when you get home. Like, wow, this tastes great, even though it's just mediocre Kraft mac and cheese or whatever that normally tastes fine.
Yeah, see.
But right then it tastes great. Like beating Iowa State in a given year, like, oh, that's a nice win. But this year it'd be like, oh, that really helped us.
It helped BYU get to 6 wins
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes.
All of the wins will feel nice, especially in year number 1, as BYU chases down a bowl game as its minimum threshold for success. Yeah, all of these things are going to feel fantastic in the win column when they come, especially wins in November, because BYU hasn't even had an opportunity, for the most part, to get a meaningful November win, let alone a meaningful November conference win.
Yes.
Jarom, it's been forever.
That used to be Utah. You were waiting for that game.
It's been since 2009 when BYU last had a meaningful conference win in November.
Okay, we're forgetting at Boise State and at Stanford. Those were good wins last year.
They were meaningful.
At USC in 21. But you're right. The conference context changes things.
Granted, the USC win in 2021 did clinch the de facto Pac-12 South
Yes,
title.
it did. 21, you don't have a P5. You lose to San Diego State and Hawaii at the end. 2018, you're up 20-0 against Utah. I don't want to talk about it. 2017 stunk. Yeah, 16, you just don't have meaningful games. It's all G5s. It's just been a minute since November. This is like the greatest November in BYU football history, is it not? Like,
yes.
What BYU has, what is on the line in terms of, hey, make sure you're getting to a bowl game.
Listen to the opponents.
Oklahoma's coming to Provo.
Listen to the opponents. At West Virginia, Iowa State at home, Oklahoma in Provo, at Oklahoma State on Thanksgiving week.
It brings a smile to my face. It's very exciting.
It is unique. Parity will be fun. Not going to benefit the Big 12 Conference this year in a 14 playoff, but pushing forward, frankly, 12 teams, it probably gets you ready for a 12-team playoff better.
And the best news about the parity is, well, why doesn't BYU have a shot at this like everybody else? Like, once Oklahoma and Texas leave, BYU's got as good of a shot as almost everybody in the league. Like, why not?
Yes.
Why would that suddenly 96 BYU football team, suddenly 01 BYU football team that had that amazing start, that 06 team, all of those teams came off of 6-6 years the year before, 7-5s. Can this BYU team have one of those special seasons? And there's not a Georgia, Alabama sitting there. Like, BYU ran into Gonzaga, right, in WCC play, where it was like, as good as BYU is, it will not win the league.
There's no Gonzaga basketball in Big 12 football.
Yes, that does not exist, and that's one of the benefits of the parity of the league. But it is dangerous that there's not one, because maybe the league misses out on a second team in the playoff consistently. Hopefully there's 2.